my brother is actually maybe going on an Alaska cruise next month. His son and his son's fiance decided to move up the wedding. They're going to get married in Oregon, and he's like, I'm going to be up there, so I think I might just take an extra week off. And I'm like, and leave all the work to me. But we work together, so I'll have to cover for him. But I'll tell him that your thumbs up on it.
It was awesome.
Yeah, well, that's good. Um, so you're caught up. Did you finish Catabasis or did you stop?
Yes.
You
No,
finished.
no, I finished it. Yeah.
All right. So to
I
give you a point in time, I am just through learning about Peter Murdoch's health condition. That's like where I cut off, like further cementing him as a white knight, bearing all forms of abuse from the people around him. But we're we'll get so we'll get into that in just a minute. I'm Dylan's with me. I've never wanted to read romantasy so bad as I do now. And this was a really good primer for. For
I watched an interview with R. Fong recently, and
uh-huh.
I learned that she went to Yale.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, all of it makes
All of it
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, it all makes sense now. And I was telling my friend, I was like, I think that like the Poppy War phenomenal book series. Babel was good, but I think Babel was the step in the direction of writing that she wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like she wanted to write that high academic stuff. And so I think now is where we're at. I think it remains to be seen with her next book because the Taipei story is coming out. Like we don't know, you know. So I would expect the writing to be similar in the same not same vein of like research, but like the same style because like I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of like intersecting passive and active writing consistently because it feels like a chapter of active writing, a chapter of passive writing, a chapter of active writing, and I'm just like,
It gets so passive for so long. It's just such
yeah,
long stretches of passive writing. But I'll say this. When I liked the character I was listening to passive writing about, I found it much more bearable where I wasn't just like
that's
whenever I
true.
was listening to Peter's story, and maybe we'll start with Catabasis and finish with. I've got some cool Dungeon Crawler Carl news that I was going to cover, but I'm happy to chat, Catabasis here. So when I listened to her talk about Peter's story, because I related with the character more, I had an easier time listening to stuff going on about him because like the more I listen to what's going on with Allison, I mean this was a really charged section because we go through in this portion everything that Alice was thinking in regards to Grimes. So we get and we were I was kind of expecting this. I don't know that it was alluded to. We knew that Peter had suspicions about some sort of intimacy between Alice and Grimes before this portion of the book, but it was never openly stated until right here where we go through her mindset. And it's funny because you know having been through Yale, like Kwong kind of her perspective was very interesting to me on feminism and how she approached the concept and idea of feminism and how she simultaneously stated the challenges that women have in academia without absolving Alice as a character of her participation in it. And so she gets to this point um, in this portion of the book where Alice goes in front of a female advisor. And I felt like that was a really interesting moment because Alice goes to this female advisor who's actually been fighting the war against, the patriarchal nature of Oxbridge society. Your old pipe smoking, guys that, ask her, oh, when are you going to get pregnant, or something like that. She goes through some of the questions and how she was kind of humiliated or spoken down to. But then you go into her relationship with Grimes and how she kind of tried to leverage her sexuality into benefit. And it goes back to what you said about not liking her character on I'm fine with favoritism as long as it works for me. And then it stops working for her afterwards and she, kind of melts down. And so what did you guys think about that stretch? I was reading through it and I was having all these thoughts about, how she was framing this inappropriate relationship, and it felt damning to everybody at the end to me.
Yeah, like for me, the way I kind of viewed it is like that female advisor knows what position, um, you know, or what perspective, she's coming from. But the professor also falls victim, like, even women who have been in that position can fall victim to power. And like once you work your way up and you fought all those battles and you finally have your esteem, you forget what it took to get there, and now you're playing into those same games, and how it's kind of heartbreaking and kind of like disheartening to see, oh well, even if I do everything I'm supposed to do, I could still turn into that. And I feel like the disillusionment with this idea of who she had this advisor as kind of fell apart.
Well, she was
And
she was
it kind of
seeking
was an
help.
existential moment.
Yeah, she was seeking help. So she finally, like, and I guess like what you're saying is like, she the advisor judges her really hard and says how many you haven't shown up to any of our meetings, you haven't fought any of our battles, you have sat on the outside and have judged the struggle from the outside without participating in it. And as soon as it stings you, now all of a sudden, are you a feminist now? Is that what you're saying? Are you ready to
Yeah.
change advisors away from trying to play into the and perpetuate the system that we're all living in? Because even the advisor was a spousal hire, and so like that's a big thing where it alludes to certain things, and this is where Kwong, like, you go into high academia and it alludes to certain at least stereotypes where you have a female professor, and is she like the token female professor that we had to hire one of our prestigious male professors' wife to keep him happy, and we also get a check mark for having hired a female professor in
Mhm.
the field. And I saw some of that, and to your point, you finally get somebody. Like, when you're young you make mistakes, and whenever you have time you have the benefit of perspective. And so of course nobody's going to really get their pickets and their pitchforks out until they start to feel some of the disadvantages associated with what whatever is represented from a feminist perspective in the book. And I think it's interesting because it doesn't forgive either side, and that's one of the things that I like about that I've enjoyed about the book, is that nobody's excused. So this
Yeah.
isn't big bad professor preying on Alice, and it's Alice preys on him, he preys on her. She judges everyone who's a feminist and looks down on them, and then they turn around and judge her, and everybody's antagonistic towards each other. which
It's a
makes
circle.
yeah, it makes it hard to read sometimes. But it also she is exploring she's exploring some pretty interesting concepts and going into some areas, within high academia that I feel like she might get more recognition for than I felt at the beginning of the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I there's a part within that whole exchange where I do think, like, I think she chose to write the book set within the time period it's in because of that. Because if it was set now, and we wouldn't have that many stereotypes in high academia at that point, right? But at the same time, if the book was set in present day and the professor hit her with the line that she does in the book, which is, "Oh, you think you're the first? You think you're the only one?" Right? Because it's obvious that there's a pattern, right?
Oh,
And
sure, yeah. I mean, it's he.
and yeah, there's a pattern because she talks about that one girl who was like bright and happy, and then all of a sudden she like wasted away and just disappeared.
And he leveraged that in front of her. Like he knew
Yeah,
there was sexual tension, and so he
yeah,
brought a girl to the office where she'd be working, and like made eye contact with her whenever he was getting involved with. It was a secretary, is who it
mhm,
was. It wasn't like a student or an academic position, but
yeah,
but he knew and leveraged that. And I mean, it if you go through Alice's head, it was working because she's in an attention economy. She like
yeah,
she's willing. And the thing that was interesting afterwards is once she exits his good graces, so to speak, where after she's done it, then she starts figuring she wears short skirts, like she's like offering up what he was after to try and get back into it, to get back into the attention economy that he was participating in, and really playing Peter and her against each other. And it gets a little bit more into that as we go, but I really think it's, to your point, 1980 and today it would be a completely different, you know it it's hard for us to get into the mindset of how somebody would view things in the 1980s, because that was probably a much more realistic outcome in the 80s than now. Because if somebody came forward with an inappropriate relationship between a graduate student and an advising professor right now, that makes the news.
that person's done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The
Uh,
professor is done. Yeah.
I I think it's also interesting that we like leading up to the point that you are in the book where they're revealing these things about each other, right? Like this is what happened with me, and he's like, "Well, why didn't you say anything?" And then now we find out his story, right? All set within the other reveal that, you know, for example, Escher is like this whole thing, and it's like, oh well, people really liked Escher's architecture stuff, so they made it into magic. And I'm like, once again, how are you telling me that magic doesn't apply in
Commercially,
the real
yeah.
world,
Like
right? At all? Like,
there's not much research money for people who are creating it. I mean, they even talked about that's how Grimes got famous. Is Grimes invented the bottomless flask for
yeah,
military use. And he has plenty of research funding
yeah, he should
himself.
be rich
But
for the rest of his life. Like,
yeah, what is he doing in school? He doesn't need money. He doesn't need funding
yeah.
money. Like that guy would, unless he did that. I guess if you were enlisted when you did that, then the military owns your work.
Yeah, they took it as proprietary thing. That
Yes.
that would make sense too. Yeah,
Similarly to how, like, certain, you don't necessarily have, like, if you get research funding at a university and make a discovery, the patent doesn't belong to you per
yeah.
se in anything other than from a credit and naming
It's the same thing
case.
with being a high school teacher right now, at least, depending on the district you work for. Because like where I work, it's like, hey, everything you create belongs to the district. Like, and I'm like, okay, like I don't care,
Well,
but
that's hard for you because like you have some writing aspirations
oh well, that like that it's anything that's made in the like within the
within
classroom,
the
right?
classroom.
So
Okay.
like if I make a lesson and I present it within my classroom, now if I make something and it never makes it into my classroom, it's just something that I've made for other teachers outside
Sure.
of that, then that's mine. But
That's
if it's
yours.
like if I've applied it because I want to see how it lands, then it's the district's. So it's
Interesting.
like,
Interesting.
you know,
Yeah, the intellectual property rights
it's an
in
interesting
those
thing.
type of things, yeah, it's from a legal perspective
That's
is
why
for
my
sure
like
interesting.
my writing, unless I know that I'm never going to apply it to, like, for example, in my personal writing, when I give it to students to be like, hey, well, this is how I would write this,
Hmm.
it's always stuff that is either stuff that I've determined I will never put in anything else, or it's not anything like it's an example, a model of what they should be writing
Sure.
rather than like my own personal stuff. Because like my if I was to put my at this moment 20-page short story and I was like, hey, read this and tell and like, annotate all that stuff, and they were like, hey, this is ours, and I went to try to publish it, I mean, that's something I wouldn't do because I'm like,
Well,
I don't want to deal with that.
hey man, if you ever need a beta on a short story,
you know
you know who to call. I'd be happy to beta for you. But yeah, so getting back to this Alice and Grimes example, we then see from Alice's perspective and from Murdoch's perspective, we saw in the previous flashbacks, which I know I'm not narrowing it down much, that's like the whole book, but in the previous flashbacks, we saw she calls back specific interactions where we got Alice's perspective when she's walking through the class. And then she then gives she doesn't call it out. It's like she very much trusts the reader to remember Alice seeing Peter in this specific moment. But she describes several key moments from both people's perspective. And I felt like it took a lot of discipline as an author not to spell it out. But I saw it happen where Peter's like, I'm just trying to survive because I just got half of my intestines cut out because I almost died. And Alice is like, oh, he didn't smile at me. Like,
yeah, he
what
vanished.
he vanished. And, we had a date and he didn't show up. I wonder why. And, like,
He was on
you
his
know,
bathroom floor.
yeah, he's like dying and getting hauled off to the hospital and having colonectomy, which I've got a really good friend with Crohn's disease, and that is a very very difficult thing that you don't see. I mean, the guy, my friend, he's like 6'4" and he swam for Texas A&M on
Yeah,
he's like, I mean, you look at the guy and you're like, man, this guy has the perfect life, because just from his appearance, like he's a
yeah,
very pretty person. We would when we were younger, we'd go to a restaurant and the waitresses would just write their number on the paper and give it to him, and we're all like, what is this, but he was struggling with Crohn's the whole time, and so I guess that might be why I related to Peter's story so much, because somebody with Crohn's, it can be very difficult to see how badly they struggle.
hmm
That is a very difficult disease to manage, and so um, I
and
really
I mean,
felt
it's
for him.
difficult to manage now. I can't imagine how difficult it was
Oh,
to
I didn't
manage.
even think about
You know what
1980.
I
Yeah,
mean?
I didn't even think about. I keep forgetting
Yeah.
it's 1980, and now like your immunosuppressants, all of the things that they have got to be. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so I'm so glad I was born now instead of in the
Yeah.
1980s, because the management for a lot of these, autoimmune or like, long-term diseases are is just so much better now. And the I mean, I have a constant glucose monitor at any given time,
Yeah.
I'll do you one better. I had back surgery for scoliosis when I was 9 years old
Hmm.
in 1999. Okay. they were able to fuse my bone into my spine and fix it without rods or metal or any of that. Fast forward or backtrack to 1980, had I had scoliosis, my back would have set off a metal detector from a mile away.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Just what they did, and like you think about Crohn's, and at the time, autoimmune diseases, and I think that I don't know if it's a different, you know, RFK would tell us that it's the dyes or whatever it is that we're eating as a diet. I don't know if it's an issue of what we're eating or our ability to diagnose and what's going on versus like in 1980 been like you don't have this, you just have you have irritable bowel syndrome, and like they don't know why you have all of these symptoms, but they just know you have like a progressive disease that they don't understand, and so it never got diagnosed because they didn't really know what it was. But I think that you have to pull yourself with this book out of your current frame of reference and put it back into 1980, and it reads differently with the two things.
That
That's
yeah,
a good
the
point.
first time I had to do that was with the whole like the hints at inappropriate relationship because I was like, if that was happening now, I was like, that would be
And you went to another advisor and you
yeah,
told them about the inappropriate relationship, and she's like,
yeah,
well, it's either you stick
fuck
with
it
your,
up.
yeah, put out with your current advisor or join the feminist movement. Those are your options. Like,
Yeah,
I'll be your advisor.
when that happened, it really clicked in my head. I was like, oh, this takes place. I was like, I gotta pull it back, but
Pull it back. Yeah, that
I
that's that's fair.
let's see, is it what do we think about? Because like we get during all that stuff where they're like revealing the stuff about themselves and their stories and all that stuff, we also get the whole like there's the plan, right? Like
Yeah,
their plan.
yeah. About how going to Murdoch, and Murdoch's plan here was always to sacrifice himself to accomplish what they wanted, and he was going to try and get Alice to do it. Which, hey, it's a pretty good plan because Alice would definitely kill anybody in her way to get what she wanted. And so that was probably a pretty fair assumption on his part that she'd be like, oh
Yeah,
well. But thinking about it from Peter's standpoint, looking at sacrificing half of your remaining life, okay, as a thing. If I'm going to live until I'm 90 and I sacrifice, I guess they would be in their late 20s in this, mid to late
yeah,
20s.
probably.
And so, like, I'm 27 and I think I'm going to live to 85, all right? So I've got 60 years. So I'm cutting 30 years off of my life. Peter says, I've got a progressive form of Crohn's disease and just had half of my colon removed. Things aren't going well for me. I might be sacrificing 3 4 years. You know what I mean? At or
Yeah,
10 at worst. Because I mean, if you're at with that type of Crohn's disease, and at the point where they have to do a colonoscopy to 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 you know until they remove your whole colon, whatever, like your life expectancy's not looking so good. So, how did
yeah.
y'all read the perceived value of sacrifice with him in light of his disease revelation?
I think that.
Um, oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, man.
I think that, like you said, I think that he saw what was going on with him. He obviously cares about her, right? So he wants to help her, even if it is, you know, whatever. But he cares about her, and like you said, I think going into it, they're like going into hell. He was probably like, well, let's think about it. How are we gonna get there? And then once that determination of we did give up half of our life to get in, whatever that lifespan is, like you said, he already knows at the point that he's in, at best, he has maybe 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah,
And that's 10 or 15 years before the deal.
before
So
the
it's
deal.
like,
So 7 left, maybe.
yeah. So he's got like, so he's like, well, I mean, yeah, sacrifice myself.
From 15 to 7, from 7 to 0, but
Yeah.
he's ending himself for all eternity,
Yes.
which is the
The other,
real the
yeah.
other aspect of this is that and I don't know that the magic in this entire book is fuzzy to me.
I
Um,
I think I've nailed it down, and I think it's legitimately just like theorem worked into real life. Like,
you write a premise, and as
yeah,
long as you can convince yourself that the premise is true,
it's this it's the suspension of belief. Like it's
How
basically
well
like,
can you lie to yourself?
yeah,
and
like how well can I gaslight myself?
so
Yes, yeah.
if I can lie to myself and I can for a second I mean in academia it's really interesting also
Yeah,
because if you think of like whenever you don't have experience and perspective and you have a flawed understanding of a subject, you propose so many simplistic solutions to very complex problems and then the scientific method proves you like whenever you test it and whenever you actually go through your research you realize that you saw only this much of the picture but so you spend all this time studying magic it feels like the more you learned about magic the less it would work because
I
you've
yeah, that makes
disproven
sense
all the theorems
because I it what is it? It's this whole like the Escher trap itself, right? It's like, oh, infinitesimal design of architecture like leads you to become frustrated so much that you just drain yourself, right?
right
But if by my logic of it all is if you know that it's not there, you should be able to, separate.
to
But
break the trap yeah
yeah, and that's the interesting thing. And I think that's like you said, like if I wish there was more like there's an explanation of that Grimes invented the perpetual flask, but like how did he come upon that, right? Like you know what I mean?
So
Like
and they I think they when they duplicate it, they briefly touch on
briefly, yeah,
the phallus the and that's where I get into the I understand oh I
is
can't
it like the
can't
Schrodinger's like it's Schrodinger's flask, right? It's neither full nor empty. It's just
it's and so they go through and they explain these logical fallacies but I don't understand the limit of of uh of the magical like abilities of like what you can do with the ritual circle
yeah,
um and so I'm not fuzzy on how it works I'm fuzzy on the limitations of it
that
and
makes sense.
like what you're saying you look at the Escher problem that you have, and both of them understand the fallacy in it. So I don't understand how they can't break out of it.
Yeah,
Similarly to how they had that liar's trap, earlier, and she just sat there, kind of stared off in the distance. She's like, "No, I'm not going to do this," and like she breaks the magical illusion fairly easily. So I don't understand how those two don't. And if you're stuck in the trap, I guess she just got sprung from the trap in the part of the book that I'm going through, um, and so she's out of the trap. But won't she just see him staring off into the distance in the middle of a chalk circle? And if so, can't she break the chalk circle? Like
yeah.
I'm confused about that a little
Well
bit.
then, and then my other thing is what's the other like I commend Peter for still being like, yeah, I'll do this for you. When she basically was like, hey, I'm gonna bring him back as a shambling walking corpse and just
Oh
get
man,
through
yeah.
it.
So like, all right, the corpse, the because I
I
get
was like,
Grimes.
huh?
I get Grimes is a little like he wasn't a good dude, and
Yeah,
like I understand that he he
he did what
wasn't
he did.
he
Yeah,
wasn't giving her as much of attention because she didn't hook up with him. Okay, so
Yeah.
like, she pulled down she slowed down how much attention that he was slowing down, but he wasn't preventing her from continuing her studies. He didn't imply that she wouldn't graduate, and
No.
she's like, you know what you deserve for doing this to me and getting in my way? I'm gonna lock you in a room, stuck in a rotting head
Yeah.
that you can't escape for 3 years. And and you can't talk to anyone, and you're going to be stuck in here for 3 years.
I
I'll
think
show
she's
you what getting ignored
the
feels like.
antagonist.
Yeah, she's an awful, awful, awful person. Um, and yeah, Peter's like, you know what?
He's like,
You know,
okay.
as long as y'all weren't hooking up, I'm back in. Like, that's because that was his
It's
logic.
wild.
As soon as he
Yeah.
figured out that she wasn't hooking up with Grimes, all was
He was
forgiven.
like, sure.
It's
Yeah.
good.
Like,
It's good.
yeah. He's like, fuck it.
Yeah,
Whatever.
like I'm no longer I no longer feel I no longer feel the resentment that I had that was created from her going to Italy with him and him seeing them kiss or whatever. But the fact that these two haven't talked more than they have just show how emotionally stunted they are, because
Yeah.
to spend as much time together as they had, in the book, and to never, and I understand the motivation. I don't want to be a charity case, and I don't want, she, I guess, kind of, but if you're going to have a meaningful relationship with somebody and you have Crohn's disease, you're gonna
You gotta
have
talk.
to, yeah, you're gonna have to tell them,
Yeah.
Yeah, please don't do a walk to remember and wait till like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, let's not.
Well,
No, I have
yeah,
cancer.
yeah, but the prognosis for Crohn's is not great, but it's not. You've got a year to live, and
Well, I think that might also be why he was more forthcoming now, post Grimes's death, is because like he knows he doesn't have that much time, right?
yeah,
So he probably, because like it's like he said, like the whole incident happened where Grimes is obliterated, and then he's trying to also figure out how to go there to save him himself because he feels guilty, right? And then he says that as he's going to these libraries to find these books, somebody already has them. So like they're always chasing each other's ships passing in the night. So there's never that, like they never see each other.
yeah, and it's interesting how she writes it, and I guess I think it's meant to be a tragic love story. I haven't got to the end of this yet. We've spent way more time on the relationship than on the some of the like the narrative of actually what's happening in hell, and it becomes an increasingly emotional and moral argument.
I just want to talk to whoever's review was that there's a romance story in this, because we're more than halfway through the book. And it's like, if it's the end, you know what I mean? Like
romance adjacent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
tragic and frustrating romance.
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, they're in love with each other. Clearly, they're both in love with each other. And they had, Grimes as, trying to, he's set up as kind of a master manipulator,
yeah.
hand tenting villain, but I still read Alice as the bigger villain. Like anything that Grimes did should do worse. I would hate to be one of her advisees. I can't imagine what hell she would perpetrate on other people. But we also went into plagiarism a little bit with Grimes stealing from Peter Murdoch. I also don't, I guess, go back to 1980s. I think she's maybe making an argument for why we have some of the rules and the protections like ADA stuff that we have now.
Yeah.
And
I can see that.
sexual harassment. I feel like maybe because she's really going into like, I know Grimes is kind of a hard dude, but I don't think he's like, well, you didn't show up to class, so I just plagiarized your work. Go get me all the things that we need to publish this, and then Peter's like, yeah, sure. I think he would have probably been able to negotiate a credit because Murdoch doesn't seem like a pushover to me. So
No,
that felt out of character a little bit. What how easy
but
he laid down on it.
I agree. I think it's just a product of its the time that it exists in, right? Because like back then, like you said, he doesn't seem like a pushover, and but if there weren't really, like you said, academic laws in place or anything like that, where it's like, hey, my professor stole all my work,
Well, I mean, but I think that they both have the option of changing advisors, and I think
oh,
given
sure,
their credentials, both of them could have
have the ability,
gotten a PhD. I think they could have had a PhD
yeah.
from Oxbridge, which I mean, don't tell me that just one advisor over the other if you're Ivy League or Oxbridge that you're not going to have opportunities and funding
But
opportunities.
that's my other thing too. Is like they're talking about how great he is all the time and why they don't want to change. Right? They're like, well, we don't want to change because we want it from him because of the doors that it opened. Blah blah
Sure.
blah. This and that. And it's like, yeah, but he is, and they've kind of said it like they've hinted at it that he's a relic of the war. Like he got big off of the stuff he developed during the war. But what has he done since then? Is he actually done anything, or is it? Or are we shown the evidence that he's just stealing from his students?
Yeah, and
Right?
I guess what they enjoy is when they're with Grimes and they go to a conference or they go to
Mm-hmm.
something that they get to borrow
That
his fame.
sure, I can see that.
And
Yeah,
so if they show up with a different advisor that's not like a cult personality or doesn't have some sort of celebrity associated with them, that
yeah,
maybe you know, they have that ego and like I think, both of their egos are born from insecurities. Peter with his disease and Alice with her diseased mind. But the how they how they attribute the solution to that as a cure being Grimes is almost paralleled but mirrored. And so Alice and Peter are, I think, set up to be moral opposites of of how they approach this same goal of
situation.
being
Yeah.
and going back to the whole thing on how Grimes died. Peter admits to not sabotaging, but not putting a lot of effort into something that could have a pretty lasting effect, aka you get ripped to shreds and die. On the magic circles, that was you know he died by trying to shorthand the work that Peter did without checking any of it after having plagiarized it. So it was almost like when Grimes died, it was almost like he wrote his own demise
Yeah.
there because he had gotten to where he was cutting corners more and more egregiously as his career proceeded that he didn't even check and he died. So,
Mhm.
but I don't know why Peter felt so guilty about it. Maybe that makes me a bad person, but you know, Peter went to hell and sacrificed his life, you know, and he was looking for it wasn't just for Alice because he was looking, he felt guilty about it and wanted to, bring Grimes back. But I guess he's the kicked puppy with Alice and
Yeah.
with Grimes.
But I think the fundamental thing to me, especially after the multiple reveals of like how it happened to him and how he died, I was like, regardless of her plan, I was like, how are they supposed to bring him back anyway? Like, you know what I mean? I was like,
We haven't got to the end of the book, and or
well, he
I
doesn't have a
haven't at least.
body. So
I don't know what's gonna happen, and I don't know how this
I
book's gonna
understand them
end.
returning to their bodies. right?
Yes, yes.
They exist. They're physical.
I don't understand what the plan is unless they get Elspeth's thing, and I think, you know, I don't know what's gonna
Yeah.
happen. I like if I were sometimes, I guess my editor always talks about the story promise, and your readers should have some clue where things are going, and you have a plot twist maybe, but you have some clue about where things are going. And looking at it from where I'm at, and I know that you guys are a lot further than me, I'm not really sure what's going to happen,
I still don't
and
know. So,
so yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it ends. Okay. Any more on Peter and Alice? Any other thoughts? No.
no.
I can't say
You're being
anything else
quiet because
about.
you're worried about spoiling.
Yeah, no, I'm like, it's safer for me to just not talk.
She's just listening to us talk about it and be like, ha ha
And
ha.
laughing, like, you'll see what she comes up
Yeah.
with, and maybe she'll surprise me. I have
Yeah.
some thoughts and speculation, but it's hard for me. It's hard for me to come up with it. So, um, news. I'm gonna pull this up. Oops. Hold on. Where'd it go? Where's my window?
Hello.
Yeah. Sorry. But so
Oh,
we've got
the,
we've got Florin is getting his own
the
his own
comic book,
book.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The this.
Yeah.
So. Whoa!
I
What
got this
got
for
loud?
Father's Day.
What is it?
The comic book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's the first volume of the comic book. It starts at the beginning and then it ends. Just so people have a reference of where it ends. It ends right before they go to kill the Goblin Chieftain
The in book one.
in book one. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's. Is this right? I'm
Mm,
looking right here, and it says this has 26,000 backers. It can't be for this one project.
yes,
$2.6 million out of his
for
fifty
that
thousand
project.
dollar goal.
Yes.
Holy jeez!
How many days has it been up?
It
Right.
ended November. The project ended November 10th, 2025
Mm-hmm.
for this graphic mop. So it ended at the end of last year,
Okay.
and he raised $2.6 million.
Well, that's like speaking of Kickstarter, like because that is Kickstarter, right?
Uh
Yeah.
huh.
So speaking of Kickstarter backing and like how people underestimate their fandom, right? So like Matt Dinniman underestimating his fandom and this creator underestimating the fandom on getting stuff funded because like yeah, I only need was it $15,000 to get it done, right? And then they're like boom, 2.6 million, right? So for example, years back and now if you go and look on Amazon Prime right now, there are 4 seasons of The Legend of Vox Machina. 10 plus years ago, Critical Role started as a live play on Twitch on another channel, and it's just a bunch of friends playing D&D. They're just voice actors who play D&D. They fast forward, they want to make a 30-minute animated special. They're all voice actors. They know how much 30 minutes of animation costs, right? It's about $225,000.
Yeah. No,
They
it's
put up,
incredibly expensive to
yeah,
do anime.
they put up their Kickstarter for it. Within 24 hours, it reaches like $4 million. By the time it was done with the 30 days, they had raised 12 million roughly
They
from
have a whole
fans,
they have a whole anime series. Like, yeah.
and they funded enough for them to get an entire one season by themselves
Yeah.
funded by themselves. and then Amazon was like, "We'll back it." So they backed it for 5 total seasons because there's gonna be 5 seasons total. And then they also backed their second campaign to get animated, and now they're backing their third campaign to get animated. So,
So the question is though, like with stuff like this, and I know
Mhm.
that Denneman has done such a good job in like he's never relied on corporate or publisher money to
yeah,
drive his projects. And I mean,
no,
he's been an indie author, is an indie author. Like he's published, but just to get his print editions out there. He's
yeah,
still Kindle Unlimited getting most of the money. You know, which
yeah. He's like, if you want to read my stuff, it's on KU. You know, what I mean? Like,
or you know, just subscribe to my Patreon. You can
yeah.
get into it a little bit early. And
I, I think what this does really is it takes it from being like a one-off, like just a one-off graphic novel about of like a quick story, right? And now makes it an ongoing thing for at least as long as they want.
yeah, I mean, but whenever there's this much money behind it, hey, let me put up a Kickstarter, and we've got $2.6 million
Yeah.
off of a side story graphic novel. That just meant I wonder. I would like Matt Denneman to put up his KU page read stats.
Numbers.
I
Yeah.
mean, just
Well, I mean, this
I don't know
if
if
I
I
was,
want him to do that because it'll make me
for
feel bad.
example, if I was, say I'm a company looking to back something as a producer, right? And I see the numbers that this drove, I can only imagine the numbers that his actual sales drive, plus his KU reads and all that stuff. So more than likely, that's why we got the news that we got, right?
Yeah.
With the other aspects of everything.
So yeah, so the next thing that I was gonna say, the Dungeon Crawler Carl TV series is go. It's not. There's no pilot. There's no thing. It's straight to full production. Like
Series order, yeah.
it is and so it skipped. I mean, probably a year, 18 months of the process that most TV shows usually have to go through on approvals.
Hmm.
So I mean that's pretty significant for somebody. And I mean I
Yeah.
know like our Cosmere stuff with Sanderson is going to get to do the same thing. I'm really excited about Stormlight Archive coming out. I think that I
Same with Mistborn, right? It's
I'm a fan, and I'm probably a bigger fan of Brandon Sanderson than Matt Denneman. I know, like our
yeah.
group, we're brought together by Dungeon Crawler Carl, and that's where everybody's really heavily invested. But I'm probably more epic than comic fantasy as my
Go
what I
to.
lean towards, from genre preference. But
Yeah.
um, but I think that what Sanderson's going to do is going to be fun with Apple TV, and I'm so excited. But I did see that Denneman is credited, I think, as the executive producer
Yeah.
of the show. So he is
He's
garnering
retaining a lot of rights. Yeah.
a lot of the creative control that just being in that position is going to provide him that we've seen some other adaptations miss, and so I'm excited to see that become more normal. And I think that your fan base trust is going to be higher
Well, I
because of it.
think that that's the problem that Pierce Brown ran into, right? Is he can sell the rights. He sold the rights, right? But the problem is that he's running into is finding someone that's going to give him the same amount of control, right?
And spend the
Which,
money. I mean, you're talking like a
yeah,
big time space opera, and
yeah,
I Pierce Brown has a fan base. They're going to get
massive.
some, yeah, a big fan base, and they're going to get they're they're going to be successful with the show, but the bigger the fan base, the higher the expectations are. And
True.
the more, like with Game of Thrones, he had a fan base, but the TV show fan base ended
Is
up
what
being,
skyrocketed the
yeah,
fan base.
it
Yeah,
it, it, it was the TV show driving book sales, And with
Yeah.
Denneman and Pierce Brown and Sanderson, the book sales will be driving. And
The show.
I feel like that was true also with Wheel of Time. I think
I
that
agree.
Wheel of Time as a TV show had difficulty, and similar to the books, the TV show is never going to get finished, because it's done, right? Canceled, no
Yeah,
mas.
yeah, yeah. They
Um,
canceled it. Right.
but they didn't get outside of the book's fan base, and it wasn't true enough to the books to maintain the interest of the book fan
The fan
base.
base. Yeah.
And there's like you're gonna have arguments amongst the fan base on, hey, I think some of the things that they did with this, might have been implied by
Right.
him, but it wasn't canon, and we got
Yeah.
outside of, the
Well, when you talk about that stuff with him being an executive producer on the show, Denneman, it does make me think that whatever news they have in San Diego next month is relatively big for the show because they've announced the show's coming. So I think more than likely it's going to be something like
cast.
maybe not who's casted, but we've started casting, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I think
I'm
there's
sure he
gonna
is.
be.
I'm sure Matt has a short list of who he wants, though.
And guess
Yeah.
what? You know how many of them are gonna say yes? Like,
Yeah, they would. Whoever it is would be, unless they had a scheduling conflict, would be stupid.
I don't think that they're gonna have a scheduling conflict.
But you get what I mean.
I think
like
that
whoever says no,
whoever
is stupid.
scheduled them for the same time is about to have a scheduling conflict
Yeah.
more so than.
Well, it's for example, most recently in like news in general, they announced at the most recent like Games Fest thing for PlayStation that the third part to Final Fantasy VII of the remake,
So excited.
and they recasted Sephiroth's voice actor because the original voice actor in the first two games has a scheduling conflict, and they got a notable voice actor for it, and he's great. He's a fantastic actor, but people are like, well, I think they were like, oh, well, they just casted this guy, Travis Williams, a new voice actor. They were like, they just cast him because he's popular with Critical Role and Legends of Vox Machina and all that stuff. And I was like, no, it was a stunt casting when they first casted the new voice of Sephiroth with the remake because he was an actor. He wasn't a voice actor. He was an actor. And so I was like, that's just the opposite.
And
But-
I think that with a franchise like Final Fantasy VII and how well the remake's done, whether or not
Yeah.
we get Chrono Trigger one day, like I really want, I don't know, but
Fingers crossed.
my 16-year-old son plays it on the phone, and he watches Chrono Trigger remake news. I'm excited, and we're getting off of books and into games, but I'm excited about the Ocarina of Time remake coming
Yeah.
out this fall. Yeah.
Yeah. I am too.
And I remember when I was a kid, I got the VHS, the promo VHS for the Nintendo 64. And I don't know
Yeah.
if y'all were nerdy enough at the time.
I had the same thing.
I got and I remember, and I try and explain to my 16-year-old about the Nintendo 64, and I'm like, you will never have a system make the technological advance from where you're at right now to the next, whatever the next thing is. It will never blow your mind in the way the Nintendo 64 blew our minds when it came out. Like, there was not even, it was.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was on the tail end of the 64, but with that being said, playing Resident Evil 0 on the GameCube for the first time blew my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, blew my tiny little freshman brain.
I explained demo CDs to somebody once, like.
I remember demo CDs.
And I
hadn't even thought about those in so long.
I was like, I remember I replayed the demo CD that had like Medieval, Tekken 2, like all that stuff on it. But like it is crazy to see like how big technology's come. But that even going into the conversation that we're having now, for when it comes to adaptations and stuff, my uncle, huge Spider-Man fan, right? He never thought that there would be a Spider-Man movie, and now we have 3 different Spider-Man actors and
Oh,
3 different movie
We have a
franchises.
bajillion Spider-Man
Yeah.
movies.
we have a
So
movie with all 3 of them in it.
yeah, and then but um, going into more Deneman news, I actually got the email. What's today? The 20,
second.
22nd. I got the email on the 16th or the 17th that the prologue for book 9 is out on the Patreon.
Yeah.
And it has a working title. The book has a working title. And the working title is The Beautiful Place. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Boop.
I'm interested to see where he goes
Yeah.
with it. That's so. My next thing, I don't know if y'all saw this.
Oh, I'm going.
We're getting a.
It's
donut.
in Seattle right now.
So what this is, it's getting its own chocolate.
Oh my God.
So Princess Donut is getting her own chocolate bar.
Dang.
Yes.
And it's apparently, like, I mean, it's called the Virgin Dirty Shirley. Matt Deneman has endorsed it. So far, it has lots of reviews. So this is interesting. I thought y'all might find it funny.
I was explaining to someone that it's like we talk about different series that have taken on a strange cultural phenomenon, specifically from books to adaptation, right? Whether it's books to TV show, books to fandom, whatever it may be, right? Don't get me wrong, Lord of the Rings has a massive fandom. The movies have a massive fandom, all that stuff. Obviously, there's discourse with certain things about the adaptations. It is what it is, especially the Hobbit series, right? People have issues with that the most, right? But it's the same thing with, like, I grew up in the time where, for example, the Harry Potter books were releasing, right? And the books were popular. Don't get me wrong, they were. But once the movies started coming out,
the movie made
catapulted it into a cultural phenomenon thing at the time, right? So I think that what we're witnessing now is, like you said, we have these books. The books are going from an indie author to now he is being traditionally published because he wants to get the print published, right? Now we have the graphic novel coming out in physical form of the story itself, like the main story. Mm-hmm. Then we have the spin-off story with him. There's chocolate. There's a TV show. Who else knows what's going to happen? Oh, the role-playing game is out.
He's this Deneman is an enterprising dude. And I don't know who he's got behind him. What was Elvis's guy called, the Colonel, or whatever they the making it snow or whatever the guy said. But I don't know who that. I can't imagine Deneman is.
But I think that leading up to this point, he's really been like, oh, if you want to make merch, go ahead. Like, he does, like, his license stuff isn't like, you don't have to pay an arm and a leg to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, hey, you want to make merch? Go ahead.
I don't know, maybe, but I do know, as anti-money, stick it to the man corporate as the books are, these books are making a lot of money, and like they're selling, Donut would be happy, but I don't know that Carl would, but I guess we need to ask what Louis would think, because that's apparently how Deneman writes himself. But
guys, I have to peace out, but I'm glad we got to catch up this week. I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. We'll see you around.
Bye.
Peace out.
So I guess the last thing, because are you a Cosmere guy?
Yeah. I read it a long time ago. I plan on doing a reread. I read the original.
I read the original Mistborn series.
Yeah.
I started Alloy of Law, but I didn't finish it. Not because I didn't like it. I just kind of got
life.
Well, I got busy, and I didn't. I have it somewhere. I don't know where, but Denneman is putting out a lot of stuff right now that's commercially successful, and Brandon Sanderson is putting out a lot of stuff that's really commercially successful. But other than those two, like I was looking at all the stats from publishing, and this is
Yeah.
something that I didn't put in this. It was supposed to go in there, and I had all these notes, and then I was organizing it, and it got screwed up. But so you're looking at a 41% increase on SFF, you know,
Mhm.
with with UK in the UK science fiction, right?
Mhm.
And from 2023 to 2024. And so it's continued, this trend has continued, but it's been largely driven from a growth standpoint because so much romance has been shelved in the fantasy genre. I wonder, there's two things I wonder. Are we pulling traditional romance readers into SFF? Where these aren't necessarily new readers, we're cannibalizing those readers into the SFF genre that were buying romance books shelved
Yeah.
differently prior to now. Or,
So I can't actually speak on this from an inside perspective because I worked for Barnes and Noble.
oh, okay.
So when Barnes and Noble, I don't know if you've, because obviously over the last few years, you've probably noticed that a lot of them have changed like their layouts, they've redone their stores, stuff like that. Because when um, when they merged with Paper Source, so like the new CEO took over and they gathered Paper Source as like a company with them and all that stuff. They decided, oh, we're going to do new layouts. Well, when that was happening, there was a conversation about because when you go into a Barnes and Noble now, you look at it and you see, and it says like sci-fi fantasy, right? Well, there was a conversation where they were like, well, let's take it from sci-fi fantasy, get rid of those titles, and just call it speculative fiction because that's a thing. And so it's like, let's just make that speculative fiction, and then the regular fiction sections over here, which would be like more real world stuff without any hint of sci-fi or magic, right?
Right.
And they were like, no, it's going to cost too much of a headache because people are going to be like, well, what is that? You know, blah, blah, blah. So sci-fi fantasy is still two sections that exist. They do put out tables called speculative fiction where it's like series that may take place in the real world, but they have that element of like magic or that
So
element of sci-fi
urban
esque stuff.
fantasy, you know.
Yeah, basically. But then what I've also noticed in the last few years, and this started happening when I was there, was originally so Akatar is the example. So
Yeah.
Akatar itself was originally shelved in YA. Then they were like, "Hey, it shouldn't be shelved in YA because of the tone of the books." Like Throne of Glass technically could still be,
Throne of
but
Glass is okay, but you
yeah,
go to Akatar and it gets a little
no,
spicier.
it's a step up. So then they started shelving both Throne of Glass and Akatar in just or they started shelving Throne of Glass in fantasy, and they started shelving Akatar in just romance section. But then they were like, maybe not, and so then they moved it to fantasy. And then now, if you go and look at the fantasy section, you're gonna find stuff like Kiss of the Basilisk, which is like a darker romance esque fantasy novel, you
Yeah, I
know,
see
stuff
that
like that,
on
right?
Book Talk.
And so you'll start seeing more stuff like Direbound, which is like Fourth Wing, but with big wolves, and it's like so it's this whole thing, and it's like and now they're
Well,
starting to just meld.
and so the question with those is, and I get that it's like the literary equivalent of Taylor Swift being both country and pop, where you have
Mm,
these crossover artists that are in
yeah,
two major categories of genre that sell both to, sell well to both genre. So how do you shelf those books when it's doing well in both? And my question still becomes: are we drawing more romance readers into the science fiction fantasy genre by crossing over this way? So is it expanding the SF, like the pure? And I don't want to use
I,
the term pure.
I
Like I don't
yeah,
know that romantasy is in fact not fantasy, but I
yeah,
think there's a lot of fantasy readers that are like, yeah, I can have romance in it, and
sure.
there are some that as it gets more into the dire bound, and
Yeah.
they like
Well,
there's
I think the interesting thing is like for me that I've seen with some of my friends that because like I've been on Book Talk itself since like early 2024, right?
Hmm.
And so it's interesting to me to see people who, when I was looking at their content, they were reading specifically like cowboy romance or darker romance novels that have now they're huge fans of Dungeon Crawler Carl. And then after they finished Dungeon Crawler Carl, like someone read Hyperion. I was like, okay, you know what I mean? Like it's
It's
just an
not,
interesting
and so
thing.
like it's like a slippery slope into
Yeah,
like, well, maybe I don't hate dragons and swords and stuff
yeah.
like that. Like it seemed nerdy to me, but I
I
still have like with my wife and my she's not an SFF
mhm,
genre enjoyer. I don't. She couldn't read Akatar. She couldn't read like
yeah,
if it's not firmly speculative fiction set in today's world, she can't
yeah.
handle world building. You know what I mean?
I
At all. And so
and I think it's kind of what I've seen is like people who have dipped their toes in the sense of like they'll read Akatar and then they go and read Throne of Glass, and Throne of Glass is much more, I would say, serious fantasy rather
sure.
than, and then from there they're like, oh well, maybe I will read, and they read Brandon Sanderson, and then they get hooked, and then from there they've jumped in this huge world of like epic fantasy because I have people who are like, oh, I read the Silmarillion, and I was like, good luck, but like, and but then with Dungeon Crawler Carl, because it is lighter and it has both fantasy elements because of the dungeon, but it has the sci-fi elements because of the like Hitchhiker Guide X aspect of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I see those people moving from. I've seen people move from this to, you know, like Ender's Game or Hyperion or Dune, and I'm like, okay,
Well,
like
Dune's like, you're going, Hyperion and Dune. Both of those are um,
massive leaps.
yeah, massive jumps, from a
Yeah,
genre perspective. But
and
some of that maybe it doesn't mean that like in not to have this perspective that if you're not a serious SFF fan that you can't follow the narrative in some of the more difficult fantasy reads. There are
mhm,
people who have shied away from SFF because I think it's just a preconceived notions issue where they think it's nerdy and so they just have been like, I don't think that's for me. But
yeah,
we start with Akatar, and then to your point, Dungeon Crawler Carl has massive crossover appeal and removes the romance because it hits so
yeah,
many genres and in how it works. And so from there, could I see someone going to Red Rising? Because
yeah,
you look at like my grid on what I post about, and I post a ton of I post Dungeon Crawler Carl content, and I post like I'm a fan of Murderbot. I'm going through it right now.
yeah,
It's all systems red is what it is. It's like strictly sci-fi, but
yeah.
written like some of the emotional writing in it is pretty good. Like I've enjoyed it so far. Have you read it or no?
I've it's been on it's been on my TBR. My parents were watching the show with
Mm-hmm.
Alexander Skarsgård,
Sure.
uh, and I got intrigued by the first episode, so I was like, all right, I'll move this up the list.
It's a
Uh,
short read, dude. It's like a
yeah,
novella. It's like
but
150 pages.
where I where I've seen a lot of people, especially a lot of uh, you know women readers, where they fall in love with sci-fi is like the tragedy of Red Rising itself,
Oh
right? Like
man,
that
yeah.
whole story. And they fall in love with that. Even though there's not heavy romance in it, they fall in love with the story
You're
as a
there for the
whole. And
emotional damage,
yeah,
and
and I
there's a
think and
good
I
bit
think
of it.
that's appealing too. So I think that once people go, "Oh, this is in those books," okay,
And I struggled with that in Red Rising. I struggled with how mad it made me because it made me
yeah,
mad. Like I was mad. Like I reacted to a lot of the emotional stuff in there with like my reaction was anger. And like a
yeah,
lot of people are there, but like for me, like I kept getting mad because stuff happened, and like he writes rage really well to me, and
I mean, there's a part where I had to pull over. I was like, I can't, you know.
Yeah,
It's like,
I had to stop reading it a few times, and I stopped after book three, and I'm gonna have to take a break for a while before I hit the second half of
uh, yeah,
the
yeah. Just
and
wait till the last book's out.
I know. Well, that in anyway. So I'm pausing. I paused on
All right.
that, and I'm going to. And one of the things that I've been struggling with as a writer lately is my editor has pushed me so much closer to Red Rising in like I didn't write the book this way originally where it was lighter. I didn't intend to write like a heavily emotional book. And she's like, well, what if this? And I'm like, but then I have to change all this stuff. And she's
Yeah.
like, just sit with it and think about it for a while. And so I thought about it, and like, it's unequivocally a better book if I do what she said. But it's emotional for me to go through and like have to sit there and put myself in the characters' minds whenever like bad stuff happens to them. And it's emotionally exhausting, like thinking through, okay, well now how does he talk to this person? He's some of this shit's his fault. And I my wife wouldn't even read one of the chapters because like she read the original version and then I did the revised version, and so she read the 4 chapters leading up to it, and she's like, I know what's about to happen. I can't see this
You can't do
character
it.
go
Yeah.
through that now. And
Yeah.
so it's so those books are difficult for me, like read, but a lot of people can go through that and see the characters go through that, and good books make you feel things. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But I'm always like, I'll sit there and watch OP main characters in isekai, anime, and like
Yeah.
nothing bad happens to them, and they win every interaction, and I'm like, I feel so much better about the world right now. Like I know that I need conflict, and I know that conflict's important, but sometimes, and I think that you have some of that emotional damage in Denneman's writing, but he takes the edge off so much better than what Pierce Brown does. Pierce Brown makes you like
Yeah.
wallow in it.
It's like yeah, there's parts in DCC where I'm like, oh, that's rough, but like it gets cut in with a fart joke, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
there's something to where the characters aren't sitting there in a state of rage and anger looking to get back at somebody for a betrayal
Yeah.
or for something like that. And I think Pierce Brown does this really well, and I think it's one of his signatures as an author is he'll
Mhm.
just make you sit in that mud pit, you know what I mean, and then he'll
Yeah.
set it on fire and be like, doesn't that make you mad? And I'm like, yeah, it does. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pissed.
yeah, I'm
Pissed for
pissed.
300 pages. Yeah.
And he does that so well. Like he writes rage like better than probably any other author that I don't know that many other authors have made me. It makes me kind of apprehensive about the series. Like it's an important series, but of the series that I'd say, hey, I'm gonna go read that again. It's one that I'd read the first time, but I don't know that I could read that one over and over because
That's fair. Yeah.
it's a. But how cool is it like as an author to look at what you've done and say, I made somebody feel that with my writing. And
Oh,
that's incredible
yeah.
to me.
I mean, especially in his process, because like the first book, I mean, he took it to so many people, and they're like, "Nah," and then finally someone took a chance on it, and then you know,
Yeah, I mean it's but I could see how it would feel risky because
yeah,
they
especially the first book. Yeah.
they read it and they're like, man, this is like, are people gonna, is this gonna turn people off? Are they gonna get and see what happens to EO and quit?
Yeah.
In the first third of the book, and then rage review the crap out of it because
Mhm.
they because of how. But I to your point, readers engage with things that make them feel stuff, and if it makes you feel that much, even if it's not perfect, and I think I'm still, I don't know if I think I'm still lighter than Red Rising, and his first book seemed kind of weird to me because he got a lot more serious about it afterwards because it started out like with kind of a, you know,
Oh,
almost like
I,
a YA
yeah,
structure, you
I've
know.
said this before. I think that the first book, Red Rising itself, is very much a YA book. But then, like, you obviously, the
It's a
characters
really
are aged.
dark YA book, but
Oh
like,
yeah, but the characters have obviously aged up in Golden Sun, right? So I think that's where, like, because there it just takes off and it doesn't stop. So it's like,
well, Golden Sun, I got mad in Golden Sun a lot, and I got even more mad in Morning Star, and like,
yeah,
you know, But also one thing that I didn't like about Morning Star, and we're off topic, but Morning Star, you don't. I didn't get the feeling that we had an unreliable narrator
mhm.
until the end of Golden Star or Golden Morning
Until
Star.
end of Morning Star. Yeah,
Yeah, until the end, because I didn't get that from Darrow. I don't feel like he like lied to us about what was going on until that, and so I didn't know how I felt about, you know,
yeah,
how mad, you know, some of the plot occurrences made me, and then like where it didn't make sense to me, and then it's like, oh, it's an unreliable narrator, and all the comments whenever I got mad on TikTok, because I post as I read, so everyone
yeah,
can make fun of me for my 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 wrong predictions or my wrong reactions, you know, on my TikTok posts as I go, because I'm giving you what I'm feeling right then in that moment, and
yeah,
not necessarily with the benefit of seeing the ending. And so, um, you know, Morningstar was a tough one for me. I looked dumb on some of my posts, or very well tricked by Brown. So, um, you know, but again, like, you got me. You know, like
yeah.
it's you know, that's where it was. So anyway, well, I guess next week we'll I don't know what happened to Chrissy this week. She must have got busy. But maybe we can get Kana back next week. But I'm gonna finish Catabasis, and we're gonna be done with this and move on to the next book. I'm ready for it. I should have done it this
Yeah.
week. If I'd have known y'all were gonna read ahead,
I just got to the point where I was like, I gotta keep going. If I don't, I'm gonna just get mad at myself. So,
I'm gonna quit. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
gonna quit and tell everyone that I read it and Cliff notes it. You know, and you you don't want your students doing that, so you know you
Yeah,
can look in the mirror and say I quit on
yeah.
this one. But yeah, no, it's yeah, I've enjoyed the second half of the book more than the first half of the book.
Oh, me too.
You know,
Yeah,
so it's not as bad as what it could be, but it's not as good as what it could be either. So we'll see. We'll see how it ends. I'm because I don't know. So
yep.
we'll finish this one off and move on to the next book, and then Kana can pick back up, and you and me will be the Murdochs of the world, and we'll finish this thing off so that someone else doesn't have to.
All
But
right,
all right, man. Well, it's good seeing you, and
yeah.
we'll catch you next week.
All right, later.
All right, bye.